There has been a setback in the effort to free beer across Canada. No, I'm not talking about beer that you get for free. You still got to pay for it. But should you be able to move beer across provinces? This is something that we've talked about in the past. I asked both Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau about a New Brunswick man named Gerard Comeau, who was charged with moving beer from Quebec into New Brunswick during the election last year. Both of them thought it was ridiculous that Canadians would be charged for moving beer across provincial boundaries, and yet the laws remained on the books. Well, recently, Mr. Comeau had a victory in the case. He won. The court ruled that the interprovincial trade barriers were unconstitutional, citing Section 121 of the Constitution. Well, the province of New Brunswick couldn't let well enough be, and they've decided that they are going to challenge this court ruling. They are appealing the decision. Dan Albas is a Conservative MP for the Okanagan region. He was behind the Free Our Grapes campaign a few years ago. Now he's getting behind a push to free our beer and bring down interprovincial trade barriers that effectively make it easier to trade with Mexico and the United States sometimes than it is between Canadian provinces. Here's my interview, my chat with Dan Albas outside of Centre Block on Parliament Hill. Explain the Free the Beer movement that you and other MPs are getting involved in now. What's behind this? Is this all about the Gerard Comeau case?
It very much is. Basically, the Comeau case has raised that Section 121, the Free Trade Clause of our Constitution, still applies, and that the Liquor Control Board, or I should say the Liquor Control Act in New Brunswick, that penalized Mr. Comeau was ultra vires or out of order. And so this particular decision has raises a lot of questions because what it does is it says that Canadians have a constitutional right to trade with each other. Again, Section 121 it says all articles of growth, manufacture, or produce shall be available or admitted freely to all provinces. And so there's a lot of big questions here, and that's one of the things that Conservatives we want to see is some clarity so that businesses, if it turns out that we need to open up the Canadian market and not tolerate these intolerable trade barriers anymore, we want to see more choice for consumers. We want to see our producers be able to scale up and grow, and getting rid of trade barriers is a great way to do that.
Governments of Liberal and Conservative stripe have tried to get rid of trade barriers, internal trade barriers before, and the provinces always resist. If this decision stands, if it can, is appealed, and Mr. Comeau and his team win again, does this set the stage for being able to do through the courts what you couldn't do through negotiating with the various premiers and provinces in the past?
Well, absolutely. And the original Gold Seal case in the 1920s, basically the Supreme Court narrowed the Section 121's application. And so since then, as you said, governments of all levels and all stripes have jumped in there and eaten up that space. But as we found in the Comeau case, that Canadians have a constitutional right. And if these regimes are unconstitutional, we should know, and then we should dispose of them and have a more free market. We know that Canadian products can, first of all, for good examples, Canadian wine. We know that Canadian wine can succeed and compete on the world stage. We saw right after the Canadian-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, people said that the industry was finished. That's not true. And we know that if we can add more choice for consumers, if we can see more competition, we're going to see lower prices, and then inevitably we're going to see stronger companies. So this is all part of a very good opportunity that we have, and we'd like the Liberal government to raise this to the Supreme Court.
You're from Okanagan.
Yes.
Lots of good wine out there. But it's easier for me to buy a bottle of California, easier for you to buy a bottle of California wine while we're sitting here in Ottawa than it is to get Canadian wine from Mission Hill, let's say.
Absolutely, and I want there's something for your viewers to really keep in mind. 7 out of every 10 bottles of wine that are consumed in Canada come from outside of Canada. That means 70% of the market is to foreign wines, and when we think about that 30%, if we can grow that, that means Canadian investment, Canadian jobs. That means enjoying the product of one province and sharing with another. How silly would it be if we said to people that live in the Miramichi that they couldn't send lobster to their friends and family family on the West Coast. And how silly would we be if we said, okay, you made a car in Ontario, but you can't ship it interprovincially. So, these barriers not only block business and block growth, they also, and I believe, and conservatives believe, are unconstitutional. That's why we want to have the Supreme Court answer these questions. Again, the application of Section 121 was narrowed almost 100 years ago by the Supreme Court. Now it's its chance to take a second look.
During the election campaign, I asked Prime Minister Harper and then third-party leader Justin Trudeau about this. They both said they thought it was ridiculous, that people shouldn't be punished for this. What are the Liberals talking about doing now? You want to send the Comeau case to the Supreme Court. You want to have them rule, because I guess you're pretty confident they'll rule that Section 121 stands as it actually reads. But they're talking about something else, aren't they? They're not talking about freeing the beer.
Sure. Well, they're talking about a new agreement on internal trade. And if you asked me the question a year ago, I would have said that was the best option. But the Comeau case is a game changer for us. It's an opportunity for us to take a look at the framework that's been created, where we have all these interprovincial trade barriers, the power of protectionism and the status quo, and really ask the question, do these still apply? And again, if they don't, that has huge ramifications for our economy. And conservatives know that Canadians can compete with the best of them, and if you give them a chance to grow, they'll succeed. And Canadians want to have that choice. They don't just want to see a few wineries represented, or a few artisan distilleries, or a few craft breweries displayed on the shelves of a provincial liquor board monopoly store. They want to see real Canadian choice, and they want the freedom to be able to say, I can pick up the phone and order some for my friends and family. And that's something that conservatives want to see. We want to see that happen here in Canada.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.